Hi friends, I'm Scott Giles and welcome to Power Talk, my podcast here on Facebook Live and YouTube. I cover topics related to spirituality, hypnotic coaching, and the hypnotic arts and sciences in general. If you want to know more about my professional work, and I hope you do, or sign up for my free e-newsletter, Power Lines, check out my website, which I'll tag at the end of this video. Now, my boyhood was during the 1950s and 60s. Yeah, I'm an old fart. And I grew up with science fiction movies. Basically, the same ones that are given homage in the prelude to the Rocky Horror Picture Show that some of you may have seen. The movies were The Day of the Triffids, The Day the Earth Stood Still, Flash Gordon, The Invisible Man, The Curse of the Demon, When Worlds Collide, Forbidden Planet, and more. Now, many of these movies and a lot of the popular literature of the time sketched out an image of the future that was utopian. We were going to have floating cities and undersea cities, flying cars, space stations, personal jetpacks, and so on. Your housework would be done by a robot, and personal computers would make us all so productive that the work week would shrink to only a few days. Then there was Stanley Kubrick's movie 2001, A Space Odyssey, which featured routine travel to the moon, a Howard Johnson's restaurant hotel on the space station. Remember Howard Johnson's restaurants? And a space shuttle run by Pan Am Airlines. Remember Pan American Airlines? What was consistent in a lot of these movies and stories was a relentless positive image of the upward progress of humanity. Everything was going to keep getting better and better. This probably hit its peak in the science fiction TV series Star Trek. There would be weapons that would only stun, a society that functioned without money, an accomplished cuisine created by machines that required neither the slaughter of animals nor massive agriculture. Everything was going to be wonderful. Well, we do actually have some of this stuff. There are jetpacks. They cost $250,000 and only fly for a minute, but they do exist. There are flying cars too, such as the $300,000 Dutch Liberty Sport. Your home floors can be vacuumed and mopped by a Roomba robot. There is a space station, but it only fits 7 people, and there's certainly no hotel and restaurant. But some of that promised future did arrive, but it arrived for a very, very select few. The vision of the future was that these wonderful things would be for many, if not most, people. Well, we now realize that these things that were described are basically unlikely to arrive for many people. I mean, sure, Roomba vacuums sell in the millions, but the International Space Station costs more than $3 billion per year to operate. Few people can afford the flying cars, and even if they could, our airways could not accommodate them. We do print some foodstuffs, but the quality is terrible, and the economics don't seem to work. There are ray guns, but they're so big they have to be mounted on battleships or tanks and powered by a nuclear reactor or a battery pack so large they can only be fired a few times and they don't just stun. The future that seems more likely is the dystopian future of, say, the Blade Runner movies, or the literary genre called cyberpunk, an imagined world where the corporations are more powerful than the government, information is more valuable than money, and power is concentrated in the hands of an unaccountable few. Depressing, isn't it? I mean, I really, really wanted to own a ray gun or a lightsaber. Oh well. As I consider the utopian future that never arrived, I find that there are still, nonetheless, some encouraging things. While it is clear that the kind of scientific progress the imagined future of the 1950s and 60s had would be a whole lot more difficult and a whole lot more expensive than anyone thought, there is something grand in the idea of a better future, even though one would have to be an idiot not to realize that there would be disruption and problems ahead. I mean, they never heard of climate change back in the 1950s. Still, the human spirit is designed. It's almost like it was built to look for a way to improve things. Now, maybe that's a spiritual intervention, maybe it's the power of evolution, but we always do seem to try to improve. Even if we as a society get past the era of peak oil and we find a very different sort of society needs to emerge from a better managed and less consumerist future, the human spirit will, I believe, still relentlessly be seeking ways to make the future good. And I've no doubt that it will succeed somehow. The human imagination always looks for a better way. It may not be the future of Star Trek, but I suspect it will be just fine. Another thing that I think is positive is that we realize we do not live in a system without limits. If we dump our garbage into the ocean, we're going to have to clean that garbage up later, and we're making changes. My downstairs floor is made from recycled water bottles, and I'm about to buy a new chef's apron from Hexclad that's made from cloth created from that same plastic waste. We've figured out that fossil fuels are not unlimited, and I see more and more solar panels these days. My church has them on the roof, as does one of my neighbors. I'd have them if my home had the proper solar exposure. In the ancient book of Aesop's Fables, there's the story of the crow and the pitcher, and the moral of that story is that necessity is the mother of invention. What that means is that when something becomes imperative, the human community usually finds a way of achieving it. When you really need to do something, you find a way to do it. In fact, the reality of the imagined utopian future has been slow to arrive, but may in fact be a sign we're not doing all that badly. We don't have flying cars, or at least not many, because we figured out we really don't need them. Ditto for restaurants on space stations and jetpacks. I mean, can you imagine what the world would be like if adolescent boys were flying around on jetpacks? We realize we don't have a strong need for these things because what we do have is working well enough, and if it ain't busted, there's no need to fix it. That's not to say there are not problems ahead, for there clearly are, but I for one have confidence in the human spirit. We will find a way to meet the challenge in an appropriate way. It may not be with cities in the sky and stun guns and ray guns and so on, but we'll find a way to make a good future. Hey, thank you for your time and attention today. I'll be back next week with another talk on a different subject. I'd like to invite you to join me. It does help me if you let others know about my work and my videos, so please like, share, and subscribe. And if I can be of help to you, feel free to reach out through my website, email, or my Patreon channel. Have a great week.